2 Samuel chapter 18. And David inspects the people who are with him, and sets over them heads of thousands and heads of hundreds. And David sends the third of the people by the hand of Joab, and the third by the hand of Abishai, son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, and the third by the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king says to the people, I certainly go out, I also with you. And the people say, You do not go out, for if we utterly flee, they do not set their heart on us. And if half of us die, they do not set their heart to us. For you are now like 10,000 of us, and now it is better that you are for a helper to us from the city. And the king says to them, That which is good in your eyes I do. And the king stands at the side of the gate, and all the people have gone out by hundreds and by thousands. And the king charges Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Deal gently for me, for the youth, for Absalom. And all the people heard in the king's charging all the heads concerning Absalom. And the people go out to the field to meet Israel, and the battle is in a forest of Ephraim. And the people of Israel are struck there before the servants of David, and the striking there is great on that day, 20,000. And the battle there is scattered over all the face of the land, and the force multiplies to devour among the people more than those whom the sword has devoured in that day. And Absalom meets before the servants of David, and Absalom is riding on the mule, and the mule comes in under an entangled bough of the great oak, and his head takes hold on the oak, and he is placed between the heavens and the earth, and the mule that is under him has passed on. And one man sees and declares it to Joab and says, Behold, I saw Absalom hanging in an oak. And Joab says to the man who is declaring it to him, And behold, you have seen, and why did you not strike him there to the earth? And it would be on me to give to you 10 pieces of silver and 1 girdle. And the man says to Joab, Indeed, though I am weighing on my hand 1,000 pieces of silver, I do not put forth my hand to the son of the king. For in our ears the king has charged you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Observe who is against the youth, against Absalom. Or I had done a vain thing against my soul, and no matter is hid from the king, and you would station yourself opposite from me. And Joab says, It is not right that I linger before you. And he takes 3 darts in his hand, and strikes them into the heart of Absalom, while he is alive in the midst of the oak. And they go around 10 youths carrying weapons of Joab, and strike Absalom, and put him to death. And Joab blows with a horn, and the people turn back from pursuing after Israel, for Joab has kept back the people. And they take Absalom and cast him into the great pit in the forest, and set up a very great heap of stones over him. And all Israel has fled, each to his tent. And Absalom has taken, and sets up for himself in his life, the standing pillar that is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to cause my name to be remembered. And he calls the standing pillar by his own name, and it is called the Monument of Absalom to this day. And Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, Please let me run, and I bear the king tidings, for Yahweh has delivered him out of the hand of his enemies. And Joab says to him, You are not a man of tidings this day, but you have borne tidings on another day, and this day you do not bear tidings, because the king's son is dead. And Joab says to Cushi, Go, declare to the king that which you have seen. And Cushi bows himself to Joab and runs. And Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, adds again, and says to Joab, And whatever it is, please let me run, I also, after the Cushite. And Joab says, Why is this you are running, my son, and there are no tidings found from you? And whatever happens, he said, let me run. And he says to him, Run. And Ahimaaz runs the way of the circuit, and passes by the Cushite. And David is sitting between the 2 gates, and the watchman goes to the roof of the gate, to the wall, and lifts up his eyes and looks, and behold, a man running by himself. And the watchman calls and declares it to the king, and the king said, If he is by himself, tidings are in his mouth. And he comes, coming on and drawing near. And the watchman sees another man running. And the watchman calls to the gatekeeper and says, Behold, a man running by himself. And the king says, "This one is also bearing tidings." And the watchman says, "I see the running of the first as the running of Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." And the king says, "This is a good man, and he comes with good tidings." And Ahimaaz calls and says to the king, "Peace." And he bows himself to the king on his face to the earth and says, "Blessed is your God Yahweh, who has shut up the men who lifted up their hand against my lord the king." And the king says, "Peace to the youth, for Absalom?" And Ahimaaz says, "I saw the great multitude at the sending away of the servant of the king, even your servant by Joab, and I have not known what it is." And the king says, "Turn around, station yourself here." And he turns around and stands still. And behold, the Cushite has come. And the Cushite says, "Let tidings be proclaimed, O my lord, O king. For today Yahweh has delivered you out of the hand of all those rising up against you." And the king says to the Cushite, "Peace to the youth, for Absalom?" And the Cushite says, "Let them be, as the youth, the enemies of my lord the king, and all who has risen up against you for evil." And the king trembles, and goes up on the upper chamber of the gate, and weeps. And thus he has said in his going, "My son Absalom, my son Absalom. Oh, that I had died for you, Absalom, my son, my son."